All right, we're here today. It's the VZR1800 M109. We're going to do a throttle body sync on this thing, which is really critical on these. How many miles on this?
Just under 18 and a half.
Yeah, this is my son's bike, and he's here with me, and it's got about 18,500 miles on it. He bought it used, and we have no idea what was done beforehand. He's put several thousand miles on it, but he's noticing a little bit of a stumble. So we're going to check the throttle body sync on it. And to do that, we pulled the gas tank off of this thing, seat. I pulled the side cover off of it as well because it sticks up underneath the side of the tank. It's not necessarily necessary, but I still did it just to keep it out of the way. We're going to pull the air box off. He's already pulled the air box off the other side. This uses two, one on each side. Then we're going to pull the air box plenum out of this thing right here. After that, we'll be setting the fuel tank back into place so we can run the thing, and then we'll get the throttle body sync done. So that's the plan. We'll see if it actually works.
Can't tell if we have to take off the front plastic pieces or not.
There we go. All right, we got our air box pulled out, and you can see the size of the throttle bodies in this thing. There's one here, and there's also one up here. This obviously is the front cylinder. This is the rear cylinder. This is the secondary throttles here. You hear people talking about the secondaries. If you look down in there, yeah, you can see it. And roll this on, you can see the primary ones working. And that's pretty much what is going on with this thing. Now this uses an idle air control motor, so we will not be adjusting the throttle bodies like you would on an old bike doing a carb sync where you adjust the actual plates. This has bleeds that bleeds air around and back into the intake. So what we're going to be adjusting is the air bleed screws, because the throttle bodies should be pretty much sealed up when they're closed. They got a little crud in them, but they're not bad. What you have to remember, this bike is running K&N air filters, not by our choice, but that's what was in it whenever we got it. And K&Ns just do not filter as well as a regular filter. I know there's a lot of haters online that's going to tell you that just ain't true, but it is true. They do flow better, but they flow better because they don't filter as well. That's just the truth to it. And you can see there's a little bit of stuff down in there. Anyway, we're not adjusting this screw down here. You can see there's a adjustment screw right down in there with a spring around it. That's not what we adjust. That is supposed to be factory preset, and we're actually adjusting the bleeds as I stated before. There's one of the bleeds right there is one of the bleed screws. I don't know if you can see where my finger is. Right there's one, there's another one on the other one. Anyway, we got to set the tank back on this thing so we can actually run the fuel pump. You'll see I left the intake air intake air pressure sensors attached. We need those to make it run right. We do have SDS2. This is a tool that your dealer will have, and this we can lock the ISC motor, the idle speed control motor. Otherwise, when we're trying to do a throttle body sync on this thing, we'll just be chasing ourselves all over the place. We'll lock the idle air control in place, then we'll adjust them and get them even, and then we'll look in the manual and see what the specified distance is, or RPM is, and we'll adjust them both back to that RPM evenly. We've got our throttle body synchronization done, and we're going to start this up. We're going to show you the balls in this thing to show you where they're at. Go ahead and pull the clutch. You can see that's much closer than they were. Now, we've got a few things to do yet. We got to put our air box back in it and hook everything back up, and then we'll make sure our idle speed's working right and make sure our control's working right. We'll use the SDS2 tool to adjust the idle speed up and down to make sure it has control, and we'll have this much of it pretty much wrapped up. We got our fuel tank back off, and I just wanted to show you here what we got going on. These are hooked up. This one hooks up over here, right down in there. And this other one, it hooks up right down here. And then we have a screw right here, right down in there, that you adjust the actual throttle body sync with. And the other one is right over here on this side, pointing right down in there. It looks the same on both sides. And those are controlling the bleed around this thing. This is hot. This is the idle air control here. It hooks to the top of the air box as well. It pulls fresh air out of the air box. Air comes in through here, goes past those screws and into the intake. And that's what we're adjusting here. We did all this. We were at step 22 whenever we were doing all this, and we're idling about 1,000 down to about 950 RPM. All right, we got our air box back in. We got our idle speed control all hooked up. We have our air take pressure sensors back where they go. We got all our lines hooked up. The crankcase vent comes up, it's hooked up. Everything else is hooked up. This goes to my air box on this side, which goes right up in there. And we'll get all that put on,